windows. And tonight we'll be talking about Egypt's diplomacy and foreign policy from June 30th, 2013 to Vision 2030. And we'll be doing that in the company of His Excellency Ambassador Hossam Eissa, the former Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for being with us here on Nile TV International.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's always a pleasure to be in this very respectable and popular show.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. The honor is ours, dear sir. Now, Egypt's diplomacy and foreign policy, from your perspective, how has Egypt's foreign policy evolved over the past 13 years, and what principles define its approach today?
It's a very good and reasonable question. In fact, there has been a total change of Egyptian foreign policy after the period of instability that took place in Egypt between the 25th of January until the 30th of June.
2011 to 2013.
Yes, exactly. Everybody knows that the foreign policy of any country is a reflection of its own strengths or weakness, a reflection of its economic power, as well as whole power and military, as well as stability, its internal power, its infrastructure. I cannot convince, or I cannot be able to pursue my interests, my foreign interests, unless I am strong inside. Without that, I cannot convince, I cannot try to take care of all my interests, which are abundant outside. Egypt is centrally located, and its interests are fully intertwined and fully connected with many circles around it: the African circle, the Arab circle, the Mediterranean, the Islamic circle, and also the European and Western circles. All those circles are very important for Egypt, given its the nature and the geography of Egypt as a central country, given the nature and also of the Egyptian economy, which depends on services like transport, the Suez Canal, tourism, external investment. This means that the foreign policy is very important and interconnected to the economy, to the internal stability, and to also the situation inside the country. This, of course, has changed drastically after the revolution of 30th of June 2013, and after the country has restored its stability, has restored its institutions, has restored its internal unity, which has been really damaged in those 2.5 years in which the whole identity of the country was jeopardized at the time. If we look at the Egyptian foreign policy now, we find Egypt a very important and a subject, not an object, as I always say. It's a doer, not an area of doing. It's an effective factor in the Middle East, and all its theories that are governing and controlling the Egyptian foreign policy has proved its correctness, and that this is the right way for not only for Egypt, but for the whole region.
Yes.
For example, one of the most important implications of the revolution of the 30th of June is restoring the state institutions, restoring the trust and the confidence and the capability of the state institutions. The state institutions in any country is a real safety valve of the existence, of the territorial integrity, of the unity of that country. This is a lesson which has been very clear now in all the states around us that has lost their stability, that has been divided, that has lost their territorial integrity, what we call failed states, which is unfortunately an abundant example, not only in the region, but in many other regions, in Eastern Africa, in the Middle East, in Europe, haven't survived up till now, and are facing existential threats because of the weakness of the state institutions. This is one of the main implications of the Egyptian revolution on the 30th of June 2013, that the state institutions have restored its capability, have restored the trust of the people, have restored its ability to influence and to do its work in the best possible way. Before, unfortunately, Egypt was governed by people who were still having the mindset of being leaders of a group, whether a religious group or a political group, or but not leaders of a country. This is very important. There is big difference between the mentality of those countries.
We had this gap between, as you mentioned, Mr. Ambassador, between January 2011 and June 2013. We had this gap. But before that, and after that, Egypt, the cornerstone of security and stability in the region, has continued to play its very important role, and it's consistent with itself. Just as it cares about its own national security and it safeguards its own national institutions, Egypt talks about the importance of rejecting all parallel institutions, safeguarding national institutions in its neighboring countries, rejecting foreign interference. So what can you tell us about that? Egypt, again, solidifying its role as a cornerstone of stability and security.
Those were the second or third bases I was going to talk about after the first base we talked,
I didn't know that.
which is the importance of the state institutions. The second very important rule of the Egyptian policy is the fact that no parallel institutions, no parallel armed groups, no militias are allowed to exist in any country. Those parallel institutions or militias are a recipe for disaster, are a recipe for a failed state, are a recipe for disunity, as well as cutting the territorial integrity or jeopardizing the territorial integrity of any country. If we look at all the failed states in the region, we could find one common aspect in that regard: the presence of militias and the presence of parallel governments. We have parallel governments in Sana'a and Aden. We have parallel governments in Tripoli and Benghazi. We have Somaliland, Puntland, and Mogadishu in Somalia. We have now a parallel government in Darfur in Niala, and we have two heads of states as well as two prime ministers. This is a recipe for disaster. This shouldn't take place. So one of the most important imperatives for the June 30 revolution was to get rid of all paramilitary or armed groups that are not controlled by the state. If we remember, at that time we had in Sinai the what is called the Jerusalem Militias, which is an affiliation of Daesh and ISIS, and is led by a terrorist called Hossam al-Masri. This has been totally decimated and totally destroyed by the sacrifices of our army and the sacrifices of our soldiers, and the country has been restored after a period of, unfortunately, encouraging this type of militia. If you all remember, when they kidnapped once before the 30th of June, when they kidnapped some of our soldiers, a very important official in Egypt said that we care for the kidnappers and the kidnapped in a way that is totally unparalleled in any stable country or any country where there is rule of law. This has all changed, and this is very important. It has its effect not only on the internal affairs, but on the Egyptian foreign policy.
Indeed, and on the economy, on development, on all fronts. Now, Mr. Ambassador, the Palestinian cause has always been at the top of the agenda of Egypt's diplomacy and foreign policy for decades, really. I mean, so how has Egypt solidified again its role as the main supporter for the just Palestinian cause? Egypt always calling, saying there will be no peace or stability or security in the region unless we have a two-state solution, a viable independent Palestinian state, borders of June 4th, 1967, East Jerusalem, Al-Quds as the capital. And what happened lately, indeed, Egypt preventing those evil Israeli plans to displace Palestinians from their lands into the Sinai. Talk to us about how Egypt has solidified its role.
This is a very important aspect of the Egyptian foreign policy. The national security of Palestine and the national objectives of the Palestinian people and their national rights is a very important objective of the Egyptian foreign policy and an integral part of our national security. This has been very clear in the Egyptian strong and tough position that has been issued from the very beginning of the last atrocious war that took place for about 3 years in Gaza and began on the 7th of October. Egypt has been a very important force that prevented the genocide of the Palestinians and transferring the Palestinians from Gaza. We are talking about 2.5 million Palestinians to other countries, especially in Sinai or in any other country. This has been stated very clearly by our President, His Excellency Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, when he said that we are never going to accept any wrongdoing, or we are not going to accept any injustice. We will not be part of this. And what he has said has been translated into action. Without the tough position of Egypt, I think Gaza would have been vacated now.
And without the mediation of Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and of course the brokerage of the United States, we wouldn't have reached the Sharm el-Sheikh
I fully agree.
Gaza ceasefire deal, although Israel continues to violate it day in and day out. Yeah. Mr. Ambassador, the balanced partnerships, I mean, again, Egypt historically has always had balance. And you're the expert, so you tell us, but of course, yeah, once we were in the Eastern camp with the Soviet Union, other times, but generally speaking, I mean, in modern history, Egypt has had generally balanced relationships with East, West, North, and South, and this is very obvious now. And maybe more obvious than at any other time, the balance in relationship, with Washington, with Beijing, with Moscow, with the EU, with Africa, with the Arab world, so you tell us about that balance. That
dates back to 1955. If 1955, we all remember the Bandung Conference, where Egypt has formulated the very new
non-aligned movement.
Not only non-aligned, but positive neutrality. What it means, positive neutrality, is the fact that every country is free to have whatever relations according to its own interests, but without being an underling or being controlled by this or that superpower. That was very difficult during the Cold War, and more difficult now. Egypt has always been independent in its decisions.
Yes.
Egypt has always been against having any foreign bases inside its territory.
Absolutely.
This has been a very important principle to which all Egyptian presidents has committed themselves, and that has proved correct during the last or the latest developments. Egypt not having militias, not having bases, foreign bases, has been the only country that has been implicated in the atrocious wars that took place in the Middle East recently. Other countries either have been implicated, have been hit, or have been part of the battle because either they have militias or they have foreign bases. So those foreign bases have been objectives of this, of that party of the war. Egypt has never been a place where there are foreign bases or there are militias. So Egypt's decision has always been in its own legitimate government, and of course it's according to the interests of its country, of that country and its people. This is a difference that has saved Egypt from being implicated, in spite of the fact that we are very close to all the hotspots of the regions. We have been implicated in those atrocious, futile wars because of the fact of those two important phenomena of the Egyptian foreign policy. First, we are against any armed groups inside or extra governmental groups, armed groups inside the country. Second, we are against any foreign bases in our country. That has saved Egypt from the implication of those atrocious wars that took place lately and recently and up till now, in spite of the fact that we are surrounded by all those hotspots and we are close to all those hotspots.
Absolutely, and again, listening to the voice of Egypt, which always calls for the peaceful settlement of disputes. Egypt always says wars will solve nothing. Egypt always mediates between warring parties because simply everybody does listen to Egypt because Egypt has these balanced relationships and is friends with everyone. So could you expand on that point, Mr.
Yes,
Ambassador?
that's why Egypt is very effective, and it's very influential in all its regional, all the regional conflicts around us. Because of that, we have our credibility. When Egypt, for example, made a red line in Libya, where we have warned any force from passing, of course, from passing the line of Sidra Al-Kufra.
Right.
And when Egypt also made its lines in Sudan, and when Egypt also made its red line against the genocide in Palestine, all those red lines were respected by other countries because we have our credibility. This is very important because they know very well that we are a peace-loving country. And we were the first country in the region to initiate the peace process. And it was an honorable peace in which Egypt has restored all its territories after its victory in October 73. So this is a principle. Egypt has committed itself to it for about 60 years now, since President Sadat's very famous visit and initiative to Jerusalem. And in spite of all the problems and the tragedies that took place in the Middle East, Egypt's commitment to the objective of peace and the peace process has never been wavered. And this is, I think, a very important element why Egypt has its credibility in that regard. But Egypt is very active in that regard. Let us, for example, see in last June, or this month of June, have witnessed a lot of
last June, you're right. I mean, yes, 2nd of July.
Yeah, 2nd of July. Have witnessed a lot of activities, either by the president or by the foreign minister, or by meetings in Egypt about regional problems. The president have visited Nairobi and attended France-Africa Summit, have visited Uganda. Our foreign minister has visited Korea and attended the Korea-Africa Summit. The presidents of Eritrea and the president of Congo, Tshisekedi, have been to Egypt. And Egypt has been the host of a quadruple meeting of the ministers of foreign affairs of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, as well as Mus'ab Boulis, the special envoy for Africa and Sudan, in Cairo, in order to deal with all the problems of the country or of the continent. I mean Libya, Sudan, and others. So Egypt has always been very active in that regard, and Egypt has always been a very important force of mediation, an important force of settlement in that regard, because it is very clear now that one of the main principles of the Egyptian foreign policy is peaceful settlement of conflicts. It's either a win-win situation or a lose-lose situation.
So we can easily say that Egypt is a country perhaps amongst the top in the world that does respect international law, does respect United Nations Human Rights Charter, and does always speak in the language of international law and the United Nations Human Charter.
That's why, for example, we have witnessed the election of His Excellency Nabil Fahmy, our former Minister of Foreign Affairs, as Secretary General of the Arab League by consensus. This is another important gesture of how Egypt is respected by all countries of the region and by all the Arab countries. This is why we have seen the visit, for example, of His Excellency President Sisi to Emirates during these very tough times, in order to tell everybody that although we are a peaceful nation, but we are standing with our friends and our brothers in very difficult times, and we have sent a squadron of aircrafts to our brothers in Emirates in order to show our support. That's why Egypt, for example, has always been the main supporter of the Sudanese state institutions and the Sudanese army in its very honorable war against the militia, the
Rapid Support Force, the
militia of the Rapid Support Force. Unfortunately, almost all neighboring countries of Sudan, except for Egypt and Eritrea, have accepted the role of being a conduit for weapons and for mercenaries to this militia, except for Egypt. And that's why Egypt has been providing Gaza for about more than 200 now caravans of humanitarian assistance. which
Despite the
included-
Israeli
Yes.
attempts to hinder
Yes.
this aid and to block U.S. President Donald
But
Trump's second phase.
they haven't
of
succeeded.
the-
We have now almost sent 205 caravans of
yeah, 226. Yes.
26 now, because the number is increasing
Yeah.
daily,
Yeah.
and it includes food, humanitarian assistance, medicine, everything our brothers in Gaza need.
Sure, and
that's why Egypt has received a lot of injured people from Gaza in order to be hospitalized in Egyptian hospitals. And I can tell you a lot
Sure,
of
absolutely.
what Egypt is
And
doing
if-
under to its
And if not for the Israeli hindering, the Egyptian assistance to Gaza and aid would have doubled, tripled, and because Egypt, I mean, these are the brothers in, Gaza,
Yes.
the Palestinians are. It's a duty. It's the noble duty for Egypt, and Egypt does that while it's.
This is a real reflection of the principle of positive neutrality. Egypt has never been implicated in a war. Egypt has always been a very effective party in peaceful settlement. Egypt has always been supporting its brothers and sisters who are now in a crisis in all possible ways, whether humanitarian, whether development, whether politically. This is a reflection of that principle which has been formulated of Egypt, and to which that country has been committed for about 80 years now.
See, a big responsibility lies on Egypt's shoulders, as it seems it is Egypt's fate. I mean, a big responsibility will continue to be there on Egypt's shoulders. It is our fate.
90% of the assistance to Gaza is from Egypt.
Absolutely.
10% from the whole world. And
Sure.
in spite of all the problems we are having, 90% of the assistance to our brothers in Gaza, global assistance to our brothers in Gaza, is coming from Egypt.
And Egypt is leading the efforts now to get into that second phase and to speed up this process and to start the reconstruction process of Gaza. And
we have
so-
already seen the meeting between His Excellency President Sisi and His Excellency President Trump in France on the 17th of June, where Trump claimed the role of Egypt in that regard, and the role of Egypt not only in that regional problem, but in all other regional problems, and its anti-terrorism campaign, and has always praised the role of its leader as well as its government as a buffer of stability in the region.
Indeed. Mr. Ambassador, economic diplomacy, what would you like to tell us about economic diplomacy in the past 13 years or so?
This is very important. This is very important. Economic diplomacy is one of the most important, I think, a basis of the Egyptian foreign policy. Cooperation with our sisterly countries, especially African as well as Arab countries, have been one of the main objectives of the Egyptian foreign policy. Almost common and joint committees, economic committees between Egypt and all its sisterly Arab countries and most of the African countries have taken place. A lot of developments or a lot of projects of developments, either, for example, the linking between the two electricity grids of Egypt and Saudi Arabia have been affected, and another one with Sudan, and a third one with other Gulf countries via Saudi Arabia. In addition, of course, to Egypt is now one of the most important recipients of investment, foreign investment from Arab, especially Gulf countries. We have all seen the project of Ras Al Hikma, which was very important and had very positive effects on the macroeconomic figures of the Egyptian economy, especially the rate of the Egyptian currency via the dollar. In addition also to all the projects of development that Egypt is affecting in its sisterly Arab and African countries. For example, we are now rebuilding the bridges that has been destroyed during the war in Khartoum after its liberation by the army. We are now renovating the port of Wadi Halfa in Sudan after also it has been liberated by the army. We have established, or we have built, a very important dam in Tanzania, the Julius Nyerere Dam, which is a very important source of electricity and irrigation.
Of course,
to
Egypt's
Tanzania.
engineers and Egypt's
Yes.
doctors are spread all out there in Africa.
That's very
and,
important, and that's a very important aspect of Egyptian foreign policy. We have built two universities in South Sudan, a very important technical secondary school also in South Sudan, in addition to water stations as well as electricity power stations in that very important country, and in many other countries, either Nilotic countries or African countries. This is the real one of the main objectives of the Egyptian foreign policy, because people want to see the results, the concrete results of the policies of their government reflected in the development of their standard of living, and reflected also in different development projects and different investment projects that will allow the employment of their kids and their children into those important developments, in addition also to developing their infrastructure and developing their life in general. This is one of the most important aspects of the Egyptian foreign policy, whether as a recipient or as a donor country.
Ambassador Eissa, also cultural diplomacy, and what can you tell us about how a cultural diplomacy is and diplomacy in general is a soft power for Egypt? So how has it evolved again since June 30th, the cultural diplomacy, the soft power of Egypt?
This has always been a role for Egypt for a long time. I have been ambassador to Sudan for about 4 years. If I can tell you how many of the Sudanese officials or intellectuals or diplomats have graduated either in Egyptian universities or in the Egyptian Cairo University Khartoum branch, and in many other universities stationed in Egypt, in addition to the cultural effect of the Egyptian writers and the developments in the cultural arena in Egypt, not only on Arab countries but also on other African countries. Egypt is a leading force in that regard. Egypt has always had this soft power, which is one of the most important factors or most important aspects of the Egyptian foreign policy. It is continuing up till now because of the fact that this has always been an important aspect, giving the common features of Egypt and its neighborhood, the language, the culture, the common history, as well as the affiliations which may render the Egyptian role in that regard very principal, not only in the Arab world but in its African continent.
Mr. Ambassador, as we conclude, and that's the final question here, if someone told you that Egypt is a voice for peace, Egypt is a voice for the Palestinian cause, is a voice for Africa, Egypt is a voice for the South, Egypt is a voice for the voiceless. If someone told you that, how would you explain this? And especially again in the last 13 years, how has this been consolidated and solidified?
Yes, I must tell you very frankly, Egypt has always been the voice of wisdom in that region for a long time. Egypt has always been the first country to initiate a peace process in that regard. Egypt has always been one of the main important donors to our neighboring countries, which are in need of development as well as humanitarian assistance. Egypt has always been a political support for the state institutions of all the countries of the region against any internal or external dangers. Egypt has always been a leading force, whether in the African Union or in the Arab League or in the Islamic organization or any other important organization that unites the countries of the region and the countries of the circles of importance to the Egyptian foreign policy. Egypt has always been calling for peaceful settlement of the conflicts, because nobody gets out of any war as a winner. It's either those who lose and those who lose on a bigger scale, but no winners at all. It's either lose-lose situation or it's either a win-win situation. I hope others are going to listen, and I hope others are going to use the same efforts and the same means of solving their conflicts, because we are in a region that is very important and very rich of its resources, of financial financial resources, of mineral resources, of human resources. Unfortunately, some of the peoples in the region are some of the poorest in the whole world. This contradiction is because of political instability, because of futile wars, because of obstinacy, and because of the fact that we haven't chosen the right decisions, and we have unfortunately exerted all our efforts in destroying, not in building. This is the Egyptian message, and we have been the first time, or the first country in the region to pursue that policy of peace, who have been isolated for some time by some of our closest brothers because of that, but they have discovered that it was the Egyptian principle, and it was the Egyptian way that is right in that regard. All the Arab territories that have been restored by peace, and all the Arab territories that have been lost by war. I hope that lesson would be very important in the mind of all our brothers and all our neighbors in that regard, in order to save the region from those atrocious wars that can be solved whether only if we trust each other, if we reach a compromise, and a compromise is never impossible.
Thank you very much, as always, Ambassador Qasem Eissa, the former Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's been a great pleasure, and thank you, as always, for your valuable input, dear sir, and hope to see you again soon.
The pleasure is always mine to be in this very popular show and to have this interview with a great media man like yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching us. In just under 5 minutes, we'll be back with an update of the major stories happening here at home, across the region and the globe. So please stay with Nile TV.